Welcome to tonight's meeting of January 23rd, 2023. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. We thank you for coming and would like to remind all in attendance that our meetings are subject to rules of decorum that are posted at the back of the room and also on our website. We want to be sure all feel welcome and remind all that there is an expectation that no attendee shall disrupt this meeting and any threats and intimidation are prohibited. Signs and placards are prohibited in council chambers, and all attendees shall remain seated in the seats provided, not in the aisles, nor shall the doorways be blocked. If you have somebody to talk to, please go outside in the hallway and do it, not in this room. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation. Roll call, please.
Councillor Baker.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem DeMott.
Present.
Councillor Emmons.
Present.
Councillor Azadi.
Here.
Mayor McNally.
Here.
Councillor Nurmela.
Here.
And Councillor Seymour.
Here.
That brings us to consideration of minutes of January 9th. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of the January 9th, 2023 meetings as presented.
Councillor Emmons.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of January 9th, 2023. Is there any changes or corrections? Seeing none, vote with your voice. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to a presentation tonight.
Yes, Mayor, Council, please. Mayor, Council members, we're going to bring forward Sarah Borgers, our interim Public Works Director, to present the options for our water treatment facility replacement initiative. So, Ms. Borgers, go ahead.
Welcome.
Situated. All right, I understand we have to talk really closely into this. Does that sound okay? Okay, great. So Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council, we're happy to be speaking with you tonight. As you know, we are here to talk about the Semper water treatment plant and aging infrastructure within that plant and potential options for repair and or replacement of that plant. As you're aware, and the community's aware, this has been a long topic of conversation over the last few years, and this past year has been, I'm going to use the word, a challenge. City Council has been asking us a lot of really hard questions and setting some really high goals for us to set. And city staff has taken those questions and goals to heart and has come up with some alternatives that meet City Council's goals of not only protecting public health and safety, but doing so in a way that is affordable for our community. So we're here tonight for a couple of reasons. The first is we recognize how important this topic is to the to the community. And it's been a little while since we've been able to speak with you in public meetings. So our last meeting was on June 20th of 2022. And so we have a lot of exciting information that we're going to be able to share in this public meeting today about the work that's been done over this past year. For just a little information for the presentation, based on all of the work that staff and council has been doing, we have been able to save up to $100 million in savings on a potential option, should council decide to move forward with that. And we're doing so while protecting public health and safety. So Stephanie Blaker will get into that here in a little bit, along with some of the other alternatives that were considered. Second, the city has been working through legal proceedings to procure property at the around the 9900 block of Westminster Boulevard, and this property is an ideal site for new water treatment facility. The court has now issued a verdict on the cost of that property, and all of the numbers that you will see in the presentation tonight have the verdict incorporated into those numbers. Subsequent to this presentation, Council will have the opportunity to consider on first reading the appropriation of funds that will allow us to retain the right to appeal the verdict from that case and move forward with those next steps. We also want to make sure that it's clear for both council and the public that should council approve this first reading, they still have the opportunity to not approve the second reading, and that nothing will move forward should council decide to make that decision. At this juncture, we have on February 13th scheduled tentatively for second reading if council decides to move forward. We do also want to mention that based on some court decisions that we're waiting on, we may have to, on February 6th, have a special meeting should council decide to move forward on a second reading of this ordinance to meet some council deadlines. But we will certainly update council and the community should that become necessary. With that, I think you all remember Miss Stephanie Bleicher, one of our project manager or program manager on this project. And we also have a number of other people that are here to help answer questions should we need their help, including Tim Reinders and Carl London from CDM Smith, who is the consulting firm that's helped us with this alternatives analysis, and also some additional staff that are here. And with that, I will give this over to Stephanie and let her proceed.
All right. The purpose of this presentation is for City Council to discuss. Right here? Oh, boy. Okay. The purpose of this, and we can, okay, the slide's up there, but not here. Can we adjust this? That'd be helpful. Let's see. All right.
Just watch that slide up there.
Okay, very good. Just trying to figure out our presentation here. The purpose of this presentation is for City Council discussion and direction on the water treatment facility options and land acquisition. First off, Mayor McNally, I just wanted to ask, would you prefer questions during or after the presentation?
What's easiest for you?
Apparently after the presentation.
Perfect.
All right. Let's get started. Okay. We're going to start with the city's water treatment system, in particular treatment for drinking water. The city has 2 water treatment plants. Semper is the workhorse of our water treatment facilities. We call it Semper, so I'm just sharing this information with council, but also with the public that's here, so they can catch up to what this project is about. Semper is that plant. Our other plant is Northwest water treatment facility. Northwest treats about 1/3 of what Semper can treat. Northwest is also, or I should say Semper is more than 30 years older than Northwest. And as time has gone by, it has become apparent that over the years that Semper was in need of a condition assessment. Next slide, please. Semper was built in 1969. As I mentioned earlier, it treats about 75% of the city's water. The photos on this first slide you may be familiar with because we shared them back in April in open session. These are some of the photos that were taken as part of a condition assessment. And they just reflect things that are older. Some of them can easily be replaced. Some are more complicated to be replaced. And some things can be repaired, but really not so well replaced. The bottom part of the slide is a schematic. And I really want to take some time with this schematic, because this schematic represents the water treatment process for Westminster. So on the far left, you can see something that kind of looks like a wavy river. That represents raw water. And on the far right, you see a box with Semper High Service Pump Station. That's where treated water goes out into the distribution system. I want to share with you right now, and with our audience as well, that Semper, when we send water out from Semper Water Treatment Facility, it is safe drinking water. Semper, however, is more than 50 years old. And as you look at the schematic below, you'll see X's in some of these boxes that represent the treatment processes between raw water and our high service pump station where water gets out into the distribution system. Those X's represent what Semper was not built with or doesn't readily provide the space for. So the first X is above something called mechanical flocculation. Mechanical flocculation, if we were building Semper today, it would have mechanical flocculation as a treatment process. Solids handling has an X through it. Semper does not have solids handling, although solids handling is suitable. Solids handling was not needed or called for back when Semper was built. Today, a treatment plant would be built with that. Ozonation. Treatment plants today, among other Front Range communities, some of them do have ozonation built, some of them don't. But oftentimes, if they don't, they have space and capability to add ozonation later. Deep bed filtration. Now, I want to make a clarification on this. Semper does have filtration. It does not have deep bed filtration. So the filter media in Semper's filters range from about 1 to 1.5 feet deep of filter media. Deep bed filtration is typically, in our case, is roughly 5 feet of filter media depth. And then treatment for emerging contaminants. This really is also kind of a space issue. Was space made available to do this, and will space be made available to do this in the future? Some emerging contaminants are in the news today, but there are going to be some coming out in the future that we don't know about yet. So I think this box is very important to keep in mind because we're thinking about the future when we're building a water treatment plant, not about today. Let's move to the next slide. So the condition assessment that was done, and a lot of this work was done starting in 2015, was done by Jacobs Engineering. Jacobs Engineering initiated the work to replace Semper, and then this resulted in the Water 2025 treatment plant concept. The basis of that was a maximum capacity identified at 60 MGD for Westminster, and the best location identified, a siting study was done, was Westminster Boulevard. Now, when I say MGD, for our audience, I'm sharing that's million gallons per day, and that is the maximum that would be projected. In 2015, Jacobs analyzed what that ought to be. They looked back in time in the last 5 to 10 years preceding 2015, looked at what demands were, those peak demands were, and looked how they were increasing over those years. And they took that information and projected forward into the future and said, what is Westminster's build-out demand likely to be? 60 MGD was the result of that. As work on Water 2025 progressed, next slide, please. As work on Water 2025 progressed, the community became more concerned, began to get interested and concerned about the affordability of the water treatment plant. And in November of 2019-2021, by this time Jacobs is gone, they have done the preliminary study work, and our new engineers, CDM, have come in to take that information, to take that work that was done in the master plan and those siting studies and et cetera, and move forward with design. They were starting work. But in November 29th, 2021, Work stopped in order to ensure that Water 2025 was an affordable solution for the city while maintaining health and safe drinking water. So what we did is we paused, and City Council gave this team direction. Over the next year, they said, we want you to look at alternate options, evaluate alternatives. And these alternatives reflected back on the work that Jacobs Engineering did. Why do I say that? Because they said, look at your water treatment capacity. Jacobs developed the 60 MGD concept for build out and said, that was 2015. It's 2022. Let's take another look at that. Is that the same number or is it something different? Let's look at locations. Is Westminster Boulevard the most appropriate location? Is there perhaps a better location? Let's revisit that. And then supporting infrastructure and needs for evaluation. This one's really an important one. I want to state that it kind of covers a combination of things. How much are we using existing infrastructure? How much are we building new infrastructure? To what extent can we appropriately continue to use Semper? Let's move to the next slide. So addressing that first bullet that City Council said, take a look at that capacity analysis. What do you really need for build out? CDM's evaluation, now looking at from 2022 and looking backwards, came up with a different number. And it was an overall water demands were decreasing and water treatment capacity could be reduced. A thorough analysis was done, and that was done over the last year. And that number came to establishing a maximum capacity not of 60 MGD, but 44 MGD. Now I want to pause there because I think that's kind of counterintuitive for a lot of people. And I have to admit, when I first heard it, it was a little counterintuitive to me too. What has been happening across the Front Range, and indeed across the country, is some cities, some established cities, have had reductions in water due to residents and businesses' water conservation efforts. They're really kind of small things when you look at one home or one business. But when you look at the whole population of a city, it really adds up. Westminster's water conservation effort, probably, it started before I started working here, and I'd estimate about 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, there were people who were taking that initiative in our community, but it didn't add up to very much. And over time, it added more and added more, and there's sort of a breaking point where those numbers are really significant. Now, if that change was only happening in Westminster, I would really take pause. But the truth is, that kind of reduction is happening in other Front Range cities, and so it is not that unusual. And that's why this change is happening, is really because of our residents. Let's move to the next slide. There were a lot of sort of options that we started with when we did this project, or started working on this project. But ultimately, we boiled down to 4 alternatives. Upgrade Semper on the Semper site. That was one that we were directed. Let's use that as a base and compare it to the others. Maybe this is a really great viable solution. A new facility using alternate land. A new facility using the MSC and Fleet sites, and a new facility on the Westminster Boulevard site. All 4 of these alternatives are 44 MGD alternatives. They all of them use Semper to some extent. The first one is for a 44 MGD plant. 2, 3, and 4 use 30 MGD of Semper, so we're going to maintain Semper operationally at 30 MGD until some future point in time when it's time to replace more of Semper. The original Water 2025 proposal is at the top at 60 MGD. And at this point in time, I'd like to share this team's and CDM's recommendation and acknowledge something. First of all, we acknowledge and recommend that Water 2025 not be built because it's not a good fit for the city of Westminster, because the city of Westminster does not need 60 MGD at build out. And I really think it's time for, and I really want to acknowledge and thank council for giving us the opportunity to pause this project and look at this, because it's a more financially responsible decision. The next recommendation we'd like to share is that we build option 4. I will get into the why of that in a couple more slides, but I wanted to introduce that now just to share that information. For the public, I'd like to share the maps off to the side, and to council as well. The map with the blue triangle is the Westminster Boulevard site. It's just slightly north of 98th Avenue, east side of Westminster Boulevard, and south of 104th. It's also abutting up against open space on the south and on the east sides. The map on the bottom, the pink part shows the MSC, that's our Municipal Service Center and Fleet. And then there's a darkened in portion called Semper and Semper HSPS, that's Semper High Service Pump Station. So the pink one is option 3, shows the land for option 3. The blue, of course, is the land for option 4. And then the white is option 1, upgrading Semper on the Semper site. We don't have a site identified for alternate land. A number of things were looked at, but there was nothing that really came to full fruition on that. We talked about capacity. We talked about location. Now let's talk a little bit about supporting infrastructure. Because we're doing 44 MGD, the infrastructure that we'd be building is substantially less. We'll see costs on that, and I can talk a little bit more about that further along. But we go from building 2 major treatments. So on the slide where we saw sort of that schematic of the treatment process, there would be one schematic of that, basically one continuous process set of buildings for that, as opposed to 2. So we're building 14 MGD now of that. We're investing in that kind of infrastructure now, but not double that, because that's effectively what Water 2025 would have been. We're also saving considerably on pipeline, and we'll see those costs later. But it is about a 65% decrease in the length of pipeline for finished water. Both raw and finished water pipelines decrease one size in nominal size. Substantial savings there. We also worked through a pretty detailed process, and I'm going to ask to move to the next slide, please, on evaluative criteria. We started with a really big spreadsheet and a lot of detail on it. And from that, we really were able to refine that down into 4 major bullet points. So City Council's evaluative criteria that you'll see on the following slide are leveraging, we're not going to move to that yet though, leveraging existing infrastructure, using the remaining life of Semper and other infrastructure to its fullest, phasing and limiting construction of large infrastructure. The second one is addressing water quality challenges such as wildfire events and future regulations. Future regulations are consistently moving forward, and we have to be responsive to those. We've heard about wildfire affecting other Front Range communities, and this council is interested in making sure that the water that Westminster puts out into the distribution can treat wildfire. Allowing for flexibility of future replacement needs. We'll talk about that a little more on the next slide, but it really speaks to, can you treat water and replace at the same time? If the space where your treatment plant is located is confined enough that you can't treat and replace at the same time, you don't have that flexibility. So moving forward, we want to ensure that that flexibility is being afforded the city of Westminster. And then finally, ensuring that infrastructure is robust, it's reliable. Next slide, please. There's a lot happening on this slide, so I kind of want to give everyone a moment to to absorb this, and I want to walk through it first. So looking across the top header line, you can see on the far left the header for the four alternatives that are 44 MGD, apples to apples kind of comparison there on capacity, and the top one is the 60 MGD plant. The next column that we just talked about, leveraging existing infrastructure. The header for the next one is, can this treatment facility treat wildfire and meet future regulations? The next one over, flexibility for future replacement, robust infrastructure, and then we have some cost columns I will talk about a little more, but those are the costs for the alternatives and then costs for ozonation on the far right. Across the bottom, you can see the scoring. On the far left is the low score, a red dot, far right, green score, middle is yellow. We sort of have a split in between. And then, as you can see, wildfire, water quality, future regs for options 2, 3, and 4, they kind of have an offset, mostly green score. That's not a mistake. That's not a misprint. That 14 MGD would have mechanical flocculation, it would have biosolids treatment, it would have deep bed filtration, and it would have the capacity to add ozonation in the future. It would be flexible for that. And that's why it gets that score. On the very bottom, the options, we want to point out that options 1, 2, and 4 are supported within the current rate structure approved by City Council on October 24th, 2022. So let's take a dive into these options and see why they're scored the way they are. The Water 2025 project is a robust treatment plant. It can treat for wildfire. It has deep bed filtration, mechanical flocculation, can treat biosolids, and has ozonation. I hope I didn't leave anything out. But it gets a really poor score for leveraging existing infrastructure, because if you're overbuilding to start with, that doesn't justify anything but a red score. Yes, it's flexible for future replacement. It's based on the site it's on, that having the space to build the infrastructure far enough apart that as future regulations come down, you can add treatment processes wherever you need to. You're not building everything inside one big building. It's a campus layout so that those treatment processes are far enough apart to allow for that flexibility. They also allow the flexibility to treat, and then when it comes time to replace, continue treating and build another treatment module adjacent to it and replace as you go. And yes, it's robust infrastructure for a price of $304 million. Upgrade Semper at the Semper site. I think it's really important to acknowledge, and I know I said it before, Semper was the right plant back when it was built. It was built with the right technology. It was built in open area. And over the years, it has really filled in that space. So it fully leverages existing infrastructure. The filter beds are shallow filter beds that is not robust for treatment, and it would be challenged in water in a wildfire condition, and it would be challenged for future regs because of filter depth and also because the opportunity to add treatment or build on existing treatment processes is limited. It can be done, but it's limited in what kind of return you're going to get on treatment capacity when water is challenged. So the truth is we've had very good raw water quality to treat. And it's also true that we may not have that every day moving forward. Flexibility, again, space issue. So we're saying that Westminster Boulevard site's on one end of the continuum and the Semper site is on the other end of continuum when it comes to flexibility for future replacement. Robust infrastructure. Some of those pictures that you saw in that earlier slide, those photographs communicated that. I wouldn't suggest that every time you see a picture of something that really needs to be replaced, it's time to replace a whole water treatment plant. Ideally, a water treatment plant is designed so you can replace whatever that thing is, whether it's an electrical cabinet, whether it's a transformer, that kind of thing. If you're talking about concrete, structural concrete of water-bearing structures, as long as you can turn that part of the plant off, yes. But if you can't, if you need to keep that plant running to meet the city's demands, that's when it becomes a problem. That solution, that treatment plant comes out at $172 million. And as you look down the column, that's going to be your lowest price. But the flip side of that is those less than green dots that we have on the Semper alternative indicate that ultimately that may be the most expensive alternative, because the day will likely come where you won't be able to meet regulations or won't be able to treat the water, and we'll still have to find a solution that can do that. So to spend $172 million and then have that problem later on, whether it's 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, that's where it becomes more expensive. New facility on alternate land. Here we're leveraging partially. We can add ozonation later. What we were running into here, why it gets a yellow dot for flexibility for future replacement, that's sort of in the mid-range. What that communicates is we can almost meet demand. We can't quite meet demand and also replace as we go. We can build robust infrastructure. It comes in at a price of $201 million. The new facility at the MSC and Fleet sites, I didn't point it out on the previous slide, and maybe we could go back to it real quickly at slide 7. That's that pink area, Municipal Service Center and Fleet. So let's talk about that a little bit. The Fleet is the facility that maintains all of our vehicles. It's public safety, it's fire department as part of public safety, it's snow plows, it's our streets department, it's our utility vehicles that go out and videotape sewer lines or flush sewer lines, or our crews that go out and fix water line breaks. They maintain all those vehicles, and that's part of what's there. The other part of what's there is the Municipal Service Center. That's where our Streets Department is located. They do their work. They have their equipment there. Our utility operations. They're the ones that repair water line breaks and sewer breaks. They're the ones that even install sewer lines, in our building department as well. So if we're going to use that space for a water treatment facility, and yes, it works, we need to find a home for those two facilities and then build them. So when we flip back to slide 9, that comes at $286 million, because you can't do that without replacing those two things first, those facilities first, moving them to a new site, buying the land. The last one, the 44 MGD plant at Westminster Boulevard. Here we've got a slightly lower score on leveraging existing infrastructure. We do have to build some pipeline to get there. This 44 MGD alternative allowed us to decrease the amount of that significantly. I didn't mention on options 2 and 3, we would have to add pump stations to both 2 and 3 to push water through the treatment process that otherwise would flow by gravity through using option 1, and actually option 4 it would also flow through by gravity. Would be able to add ozonation in the future, flexibility for future replacement. That site is ideal for that. Robust infrastructure, absolutely, at $196 million. You'll notice that there are some asterisks. There's an asterisk next to options 1, 2, and 3. There's a little less that's known. The Westminster Boulevard site, we've done geotechnical studies on it. We've evaluated the site. We know more about it, so we're a little more honed in on that cost. It could potentially go 30% more on options 1 and on the Water 2025 and on option 4. For options 1, 2, and 3, it's a class 5 estimate, minus 30 to plus 50%. So we're still very high level. More design needs to be done to refine that. Ozonation. The Water 2025 project was designed so that ozonation would just be part of the structure, built right away, not to be added later. Listening to council's feedback, the team decided, let's do ozonation as an add alternate, something that could be added later, could be added at the tail end of construction, depending on how funding looks. But it's a slightly different design that adds more flexibility for that. We actually think that makes it a little better than Water 2025 in that regard. Again, flexibility for future replacement. Those costs are a little different. The $23 million that's included in the 304 for Water 25 is kind of higher. It's a bigger plant. Upgrading Semper on the Semper site. Because you're dealing in a confined space, you're kind of retrofitting something that's already built. Those kind of costs tend to be higher, hence the $32 million. Options 2 and 3, $18 million. Option 4, we can get that down to $15 million. When we look at this from the top line to the bottom, we're saving upwards of almost $100 million. As we move forward, let's go ahead to the next step slide. We've really come to this point because there's been a milestone in the land acquisition effort. And there is a companion report that comes with that. So we're coming to council today for next steps. Moving forward, if council chooses to move forward with option 4, the land acquisition and appeal require payment of funds for the entire cost less the money already paid. Sarah mentioned that we are looking at a January 23rd date for first reading. We may in fact be looking to accelerate the second reading date to February 6th, contingent on what council's findings are on our timeline with Jefferson County. And of course, City Council can vote down the appropriations on funds on the later date, the February date, at the second reading after public session, should they decide to do so, or should you all decide to do so. And that concludes this presentation.
I just want to publicly say thank you for the time and the effort. I know when a new council came in and we started to say, whoa, I can't even imagine what that maybe felt like, but you have stayed with us the whole time. You have been gracious with your time. You have met with us on special meetings just so we can get this all through our heads, no matter who it was that was asking. So I just want to publicly say thank you for helping us get to where we are tonight. Is there council questions? Councilor Baker? And before we start asking our questions, I would remind council to ask our question, take a deep breath, let our presenters answer, and then if you have another question, we'll ask another question, take a deep breath, and let them answer.
Great, thanks so much. My first question is, what is the future of the Northwest treatment plant? How much longer does it go, and when will we have to fix it or replace it?
The Northwest Water Treatment Facility has membrane filters. Membrane filters get replaced periodically. Northwest, because it is a smaller plant, has more latitude for being shut down to replace than our workhorse, the Semper Water Treatment Facility. So when you think about Semper and a new water treatment facility being broken down into these components, we've called them trains, we've called them modules, but it's 15 MGD. We're going to be 15 MGD of treatment here. We're going to move over certain space on a site and move in another 15 MGD. We're breaking it up so we have that same luxury that we have with Northwest right now.
So how long is Northwest going to last?
I don't have a date on what that would be. It's a fair question. It was built in 2002. It continues to be maintained. There is work that is, so I don't know that it needs to be replaced and relocated somewhere else. I think that's really what I'm getting at. Does it need to have that done? No, not necessarily, because its treatment capacity is small enough that it affords us the flexibility to shut it down and work on it for periods of time.
Okay, according to the IRS schedules, a lot of industrial plants like that have a 50-year lifespan. Is that a fairly proper guesstimate?
I don't know why that would be incorrect. I certainly wouldn't contest it. I think what I'm trying to say is something a little different, in that if you can shut a treatment plant down and work on it, it's different than a treatment plant that your public is relying on for their drinking water and can't be shut down to work on. And that is the critical difference between a really rather small treatment plant and a much larger treatment plant that's not built into separate trains.
Okay, thank you. My next question is the Northwest plant then a really forever plant? So as long as we maintain it, and I was told when I took the tour that the membrane filters last about 10 years. And of course, that depends a lot on use, and we use Northwest as our backup plant because it has the capacity to give sanitary water to the entire city.
It can do that. That's a really great question. And just for a point of clarification, to say it can do it for the entire city is true for indoor demand. And when I say indoor demand, I'm talking about outside of the irrigation season. So our irrigation season, as we watch water consumption go up and then come down through the calendar year, it tends to increase in March and stay very high and decrease in October. So before March and after October, Northwest Water Treatment Facility can meet Westminster's demands. In those months in between, from April through until sometime in October, the city relies on Semper.
So is it a forever plant as long as we maintain it and swap the filters out every 10 years?
It's more than filter replacement. There are other things. Electrical has to be replaced. There's piping that needs to be replaced. Pumps need to be replaced. Some of that's already been done since 2002. It's not that it's just been left running without that improvement, but that's been done. When you're talking about major improvements, maybe something with the clear well, that would require shutting Northwest down. But again, because it's a smaller plant, it's one train, 15 MGD, that affords us the flexibility to do that.
Okay, thank you. In these four alternatives, will all of them last 50 years?
I don't know that building Semper on the Semper site would. So moving back to slide 9 of 10, that's probably the one that I would be the most concerned about. Flexibility for future replacement. Can we treat for wildfire? At what point are future regs going to be an issue? Well, EPA and Colorado Department of Health and Environment, they are the agencies that control that in partnership. So those are regulatory requirements. Those are not optional for this city or for any city, any water provider. So those we have to pay attention to. So when you see that red dot for flexibility for future replacement, wildfire, and robust infrastructure, that may not last 50 years.
Okay, well, I wasn't thinking about seeing into the future and what the new federal regulations are because I'm as lousy at that as anyone. I was thinking mechanically wise, with proper maintenance, of course, because I think we've been told we plan on pumps lasting 25 years. Mm-hmm. So, of course, a 50-year plant means we're going to have to replace the pumps a couple times maybe. So mechanically, will all these four alternatives function for 50 years?
They're actually intended to function for way past 50 years. The goal was for all of the options, ideally, to last more than 50 years. And when I look at these, option 3 and 4 are the best for doing that because they provide that ability to meet the city's demand and replace those major trains as needed. If you take a whole train down, that's 15 MGD. It's less than taking all of Semper down, fortunately. But that is the chunk that you are replacing at that time, and you're also maintaining water supply, a drinking water supply to the city as you do that. So it's more than 50 years. The intent is for for these alternatives to be more than 50 years. We don't want to go looking for a new plant 50 years from now. We want enough space that when some reg comes out and it says it's time to treat for this emerging contaminant, we have a place to put it without looking for new land to put it on. I don't know that option one lasts 50 years. I wouldn't be confident saying that.
My next question has to do with a place to put it on. You have in this graphic you gave us ozonation at Semper at $32 million. Where would you put that?
That would be pre-ozonation. Ideally, we would want to do ozonation just upstream of filtration. But because of site constraints, we had to put it at a different place in the process that's upstream of Floxed.
Okay. Well, I'm asking footprint. Where would you put it on Semper?
On Semper, it would be located kind of on the western side of the property, just a little bit north of where the entrance to Semper is.
Okay, there is the main Semper plant, and then just to the west of Semper, there seem to be 4 major structures, right? Just to the west of the main plant, there are 4 structures. When you look at a map of Center from the air.
I'm thinking about the sed basins when you say that. There are 2 sed basins on the north and 2 sed basins on the south of the main structure. And I know everybody's on council's been to Semper. You drive in and you walk into that main entrance. There are two sed basins on the north and 2 sed basins on the south. Is that what you're referring to?
And these are the pre-treatment sedimentation basins, right?
Right.
Gotcha. Okay. And so you would put the ozonation plant just to the maybe north and west of those 4
Just
buildings.
to the west, right, just to the west of that.
Okay. My next question is that not enough land to put a deep filter bed on?
No.
Or like the land just to the south, on the south part of the Semper site, where we park like semi-trailers and stuff like that?
No.
Okay. And what about the parking lot just to the south of the plant itself? There's a big parking lot directly south of the plant, Semper plant itself.
Right.
Really, right next to all of the transformers that really public service has there, or XL Energy, sorry.
Right, that is the parking area for the MSC and the fleet. We did come up with an alternative there. What we could put there was not filtration. Filtration did not fit there. It was solids handling, I believe, to some extent. And then it required building, for that alternative, building a parking structure to replace that, moving some of the buildings to other sites. But there was no filtration bed located in that area.
Okay. And and speaking of solids handling, and you have the engineers here, could they confirm, if my memory is accurate, on the 600,000 gallons of wastewater a day?
So this was a question that came up in pre-session, and I talked to others since, and I think you are correct. It is 600,000 gallons a day. With
So-
mechanical dewatering, which we would have in this new plant, we would be reusing some of that water that we could conserve through mechanical dewatering.
So we could theoretically save as much as 250 acre feet of water a year? I think that'd be a good thing.
I agree, and I think that's a great reason to pick option 4, frankly, not to mention option 3 or option 2. Option 1, we can't quite get the kind of mechanical dewatering that we would want. It's limited. Again, it's just a real estate issue, what space is available.
As I remembered the briefing on option 4, we were using gravity sedimentation to get the solids. So
That
we
was
wouldn't save any water there, would we?
Actually, we would. It's just a different process, and that's more of a phased approach. So we'd have some mechanical dewatering, and we would also have some gravity. Why would we use gravity there? Because we have the space and it's cheaper, and we just are trying to use the city's money as wisely as we can. If we have the space and it's less costly, why wouldn't we do it?
My next question is, don't all 4 alternatives require us to drill under the railroad tracks for a pipeline?
Yes, all 4 of them do, including the Semper alternative.
Okay. And in the number 4, right-sized,
If I could just interrupt you for a minute. I saw a puzzled look, and so I wanted to answer what I think that puzzled look was. And that was, why do you have to put a pipeline underneath the railroad for option 1? We talked about bifurcation very early on, and where Semper is not bifurcated. Where Semper is not bifurcated are in just a few places, but they're critical places. And for our audience, bifurcation is sort of getting back to that issue of we're breaking up the treatment plant into components that treat water here and treat water here and treat water here. So if this part needs to go down, or if indeed it fails, we have these other 2 parts running. We don't have all our eggs in one basket, so to speak. Right now, Semper has one 60-inch pipe underneath the BNSF railroad. That's a single point of failure. If we're going to rely on Semper alone, we need to put another pipe underneath the railroad tracks, another 60-inch pipe. If we're going to put 15 MGD somewhere else, say on the Westminster Boulevard site, now we're sending water elsewhere. It's getting into the distribution by a different mechanism other than the high service pump station. So we don't need to put that 60-inch pipe underneath that railroad. Thank you for letting me explain that.
sure, no problem. We want to communicate here. Absolutely, we want to communicate here, and we need to take as much time as that takes. On option number 4, when we add on the 2 envisioned water treatment trains, one of the advantages of a right-sized 15 million gallon a day plant on location 4 is that we would run the finished water pipe to Sheridan Boulevard. And Sheridan Boulevard has a pipe large enough to handle the 15 million gallons a day. In Water 2025, when we were building a 30 million gallon a day plant, that was not an option for us. And part of the pipeline expense was we had to run a large finished water pipeline up to the high service pump station. Well, if we add 1 or 2 more 15 million gallon a day water trains at Westminster Boulevard, aren't we going to have to run a new pipeline up to the high service pumps? And aren't we going to have to build at least 1 or 2 more bores under the railroad tracks to get the raw water there?
Okay. There's a lot that you said, and some of it reminds me of things we were talking about several months ago, but have since changed in our October meeting. So I heard 2 trains. 2 trains we have set aside. We are doing 1 train of 15 MGD. Why? Because it's more cost effective. And splitting 44 MGD into 2 11 MGD trains just wasn't necessary. 1 15 MGD train does the job. the Water 2025 project was going to rely on Semper for 30 MGD. We're doing exactly the same thing here and adding 15 MGD of new. So it's one train. Pumping water to Sheridan Boulevard. We're no longer we are sending water to Sheridan Boulevard. It doesn't go through the high service pump station. There'll be a pump station as part of the water treatment facility. They typically almost always have pump stations at a water treatment facility site. That pump station will send that water through a 30-inch pipe over to Sheridan Boulevard, about 2,000 feet of pipe. So the high service pump station continues to serve Semper, and the 15 MGD water, the water from the 15 MGD train at a new site, if it were the Westminster Boulevard site, does not have to go through the high service pump station. Were you asking about options 2 and 3? Maybe that's what you were asking about. Okay, that's a clarification. I know you said more. Would you please repeat the next part of your question, because that's the best I can remember answering for.
In the footprint, the mayor and I were shown, there was one water treatment train, which had one building that had rapid mixing, mechanical flocculation, sedimentation, and then it jumped to another building for the deep bed filtration, and they were all in a solid color. And then in a white color were 2 future edition 15 million gallon water treatment trains. So my question is
Right.
about how these future trains would convey finished water to our water system.
They would be pumped directly from that location. They would not go up to the high service pump station. They would just get pumped directly from there.
So, I mean, we would add 30 million more gallons a day to the 30-inch pipeline on Sheridan?
We would reevaluate. So this is where we're doing things in a flexible manner, flexible for the future. Today, it makes sense to put a pipeline for option 4 out into Sheridan Boulevard. In the future, when we do the next 15 MGD train, maybe that'll be sufficient. Maybe we'll run it up to 104th. Maybe we'll run it down to Sheridan. Maybe we'll run it down 98th Avenue. I don't know. That's projecting forward, and it's not the kind of answer an engineer could give, because our distributions and demands and our infrastructure changes over time, and at that future point in time, some of those things may be different enough that what we think we would do today, we won't do. We'll do something slightly different.
So, okay, but we do have to go at least 1 or 2 more pipelines for raw water under the railroad tracks.
Raw water. Yes, you asked about raw water. We would be using as much of the existing raw water pipeline as is cost effective, and we would extend the raw water pipeline underneath the BNSF Railroad. On that day, some point in the future, maybe it's 20 years from now, maybe it's 25 years from now, maybe it's 15 years from now, maybe it's 30 years from now, when it's time to completely shut down Semper, when that time comes. At that point, a second raw water pipeline would be called for. And at that point, we would use as much of the existing raw water pipeline as we could possibly use. So they're about, we would be using about, I think it's about 2 miles of pipeline that are already existing, and we would extend it from there. So we'd be extending the raw water pipelines that we already have, just to make the best of the existing infrastructure we have. But yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else with questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
I do not have questions. I just also want to, like the mayor, publicly thank you. We've been at this, for me, for a number more years than
Yeah.
the others up here. And I know I've been kind of a pain in the ass, excuse my language, but I know that that is a fact. So the fact that we've come up with something that everybody's a lot happier with and the work that you've done, I wanted to personally thank you all.
Councillor Emmons?
Thank you. I'd like to jump on that bandwagon. And Sarah and Stephanie, how you describe things to not only council, but for our residents and constituents to understand it is so helpful, because what we have is very complicated when you talk about fluctuation, and I'm not even saying it right? So I appreciate like how you describe things and bring it into perspective on a lot of levels is incredibly helpful. So thank you for taking the time. As Mayor Pro Tem said, and the mayor have said, I'm sure it wasn't the easiest, but I can tell you that it's appreciated not only from our side, but for our residents to take a moment and pause and say, is it the best step forward? It wasn't, and now I feel confident that we're headed in a way better direction than what we were. So thank you.
Councillor Seymour?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Likewise, but also too, as far as options, and one thing that is important to me too is that while we're looking at a potential of saving $100 million or more, which is absolutely critical to this process, having that number at 196 for option 4, since it has been looked at so deeply, gives me I would hate to see a selection of another option that we haven't graded out and we come out 50% over. And so I think that's a great opportunity to have that number having been visited. And then also on ozonation is that if we come to that and we can look at that as an option, that add-on is the least of all of them as well. So then we can have that complete package based on today's regulations, and it will give our residents, especially, we've talked about the workhorse at Semper. Something that we talked about in the pre-meeting is the fact that it's our peak season one, and so it's not our critical infrastructure package. But if we have a fire in the watershed, or when we have a fire in the watershed, we will be looking at providing critical indoor drinking water and not the irrigation water with that. So I think that you've come to a place, and right sizing is the best way, and I appreciate that work.
Councillor Namella?
I also want to thank you for taking all of this time. I'm glad that we did it. And we took the time to just evaluate what was the best move. Certainly it's less than the $250 million when we started, and obviously it went up to $300 million, and now we're down to something that's closer to $200 million. I'd certainly like to see how this plays out in our financial model, right? So I remember we were looking at $150 million as just a placeholder until we knew what we were dealing with. So that for me would be important to do. I see on our next steps that we're looking at appropriating funds. So that would be helpful and also to figure out, if we're looking at the ozonation, is it, I'm assuming building it sooner rather than later is more cost efficient. So just factoring that choice into the scheme of things would be helpful as well.
Councillor Izadi?
Thank you, Mayor. And likewise, from other comments up here, all 7 of us, and this is for the public as well, we all came to council with different backgrounds, different experiences, different understanding and areas of expertise, right? None of it is mechanical flocculation or ozonation or, the things that you have guided us through for the last 12 months. So thank you for that. And to the public, as you know, I care a lot about public input, and I know that this may not have been to the level of publicity as we would have liked it to be. This is first reading, right? And like they said, as you learn more about these options via the presentation tonight and via your own research, and you have input, let us know. If there is something that we are missing, let us know, because this is first reading. There's always a chance to change my mind, change our minds before second reading. That's important to me, that we hear your input. So just wanted to make sure that that's known. But thank you, staff. It's been great. And I would also like to know the financial impacts. To me, public health, water, safe drinking water, I actually try not to focus on the money aspect, because for all of you, for your household budget, if there is a critical emergency that occurred in your home, you're not going to say, well, can we afford it? Right? You're going to do whatever you can to keep your family healthy. So I want to make sure that that's known out there too, that this is not just a money topic. This is mainly a what's best for Westminster long term, for the resiliency for our health. So thank you for listening.
Again, thank you tonight. Thank you, CDM, for all your work. Just thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
That brings us to, while you're clearing your area, I will just say, next up is public comment. I know we received 2 emails, and we have read those. I just want to state for anybody that's going to come up and talk, we don't have a timer tonight because we are in the midst of changing software here, but our city clerk will have her phone and time it, and there'll be beautiful chimes when your time is up. And I know we have 2 voicemails, but do you want to go with the people that signed up first?
Our first speaker is Carol Campbell.
Welcome.
I know you guys knew I would be back, right?
We've missed you.
So good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Councilors. My name is Carol Campbell, and I'm a 40-year resident of Westminster. I worked for the Environmental Protection Agency for 33 years, and I have extensive experience and expertise in drinking water and wastewater. So I have previously registered my concerns over the water rate decreases that were approved last January through March, which reduced the Tier 3 and Tier 2, which reduced the Tier 3 to Tier 2, and then reduced the Tier 1 and 2 rates, and broadened the number of gallons in each tier. Westminster citizens do not pay for the true cost of producing the water that we drink, and the city is in effect subsidizing all the residents for their water use, especially the highest water users. This decision cost the city taxpayers $4.1 million in 2022, and that was information that the city staff provided last year. I'm unclear how much the reevaluation of the water treatment plant options cost. We were originally told $1.1 million in 4 months, and that was supposed to be a report in June of 2022, which is now 7 months later, so I'm not sure if the evaluation still only cost $1.1 million. The $5.2 million or more of lost revenue and expenditures does not seem to be particularly thrifty, which has been one of the council's goals, especially since building costs and interest rates for borrowing money continue to rise. In the information presented, it says that the community was concerned about the cost of a new water treatment plant under the 2025 plan. I doubt that most residents had or have any idea how much a new water treatment plant costs. They just want clean and safe water to drink. I submit that was some of the council members that caused this relook, not the community. There were some residents' concerns about their water bill costs, but as I have stated previously, we live in a dry climate, and it makes no sense to continue to subsidize 70% of our potable water for use for outside watering. Instead, we should be focusing on education, xeriscaping, grass buybacks, increased reclaimed water and raw water use, and conservation to decrease potable water use and costs to residents. It's an imperative that a decision for a new drinking water facility be made immediately, and that the $22 million should be moved from the utility capital project reserve to the utility water fund to preserve the city's ability to appeal the land acquisition costs or to pay the landowner what is owed so we can move forward on this build. The sooner and faster we can build a new facility, the less it will cost. I re-reviewed the Water 2025 plan prior to evaluating the present proposals before us tonight. Interestingly enough, other than the final design size, I am not sure that the original 2025 plan wasn't correct. It was also going to be a partial build-out with construction of a 14 million gallon per day treatment train with continued use of Semper until 2040, which I don't see as much different than what you're proposing for option 4. The second part of the construction was for design and build out of an additional 42 million gallon per day, 3 treatment train projects starting in 2036, which had a design component which would have allowed for revisiting whether that size facility was necessary or what facility was necessary. So after reviewing the options, I agree option 4 with a couple of caveats is the proper way to go. But the city cannot afford to wait to build an ozonation facility, which would be needed for wildfire. We were all present last year when the Marshall Fire occurred, and fires can happen anywhere, and Westminster would be shut down without any viable fast path forward without this treatment capability. Also, I do not see a cost estimate for a granular activated carbon module, which I believe should be costed out as part of this process. PFAS is present in freshwater fish throughout the United States and many water sources, and EPA is presently working with the states and local communities to collect extensive monitoring data and is evaluating promulgating drinking water standards for PFAS in the near future. It's already being evaluated. So it is highly likely that there will be a PFAS drinking water standard before this new facility is completely built. And the science right now says no PFAS is okay. So, I think we need to consider how much that treatment train would cost. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Emily Brooks.
Welcome.
Thank you. I first want to say ditto everything my friend Carol said. I agree 100% with her concerns and appreciate that we have somebody with her expertise in our community to share with us. Good evening and Happy New Year. I have comments on 2 topics, recycling and water. I fully support Council's direction to staff to pursue consolidation of the existing recycling facilities and expand the type of services provided. The unstaffed facilities provide a suboptimal experience for residents and staff, and a new approach is needed. I'm especially interested in the potential availability of composting drop-off, as I'm currently using the drop-off composting service provided by Sustainability in Arvada. It's a reasonable cost of $2 for up to 5 gallons. It would be wonderful to have an option closer to home. Sustainability offers a wide variety of recycling services, even including electronics and styrofoam, in a really convenient drive-through experience. I'm really impressed by them and want to quote from their website. Sustainability is a recycling and composting company that combines our passion for the environment with an understanding that every human being has gifts and talents to offer our communities and our planet. We value a diverse workforce, which includes individuals who have intellectual/developmental disabilities, a significantly underemployed segment of our society. Our team is committed to filling unmet recycling needs in the Denver metro area by working in partnership with cities, residents, and businesses to divert valuable resources from landfills. End quote. I encourage the council, city manager, and staff to connect with this organization if you have not already. I don't know if we can partner with them, but I believe there's a lot to learn from their operation and business model. Now for water. I appreciate the presentation tonight as a sign of progress towards getting this much needed and important infrastructure project back on track after a long and, in my opinion, unnecessary and misleading detour. Now we see what value was gained from the $1 million, or maybe it was $1 million plus, spent to take another look. A new plant at a new location is still the solution. It's deja vu all over again. I think it's interesting that cost adjustments are being made through initial capacity reduction of the new plant, which it sounds like was already planned for, as well as holding off on two critical components of the original plan, while at the same time proposing to hang on to the aging Semper plant for another 20 years. I just want to say, I think our staff would likely have been continuing to evaluate the water capacity needs with or without this pause that was taken to do that at this time. That's part of the business that they're in. So I don't know that we needed to take a year off to get that done. Are the additional ongoing costs to run Semper included in these cost estimates? As a former operations director, I know running operations in 3 locations costs more than running them in 2. So I think we need to have an understanding about the operational additional components associated with the new plan. As for the decision to defer the capability to address the known environmental impacts to our water supply of wildfire and PFAS, where's the risk analysis to support these actions? What is the plan B to address the water quality impacts when they become necessary? We need to acknowledge that for both wildfire and PFAS, it's not if, but when these hazards will occur in our water. A failure to protect the water supply and to push these capabilities into the future reminds me of the recent implosion of the technical capability at Southwest Airlines. Needed functionality and technology updates were deferred until everything fell apart in a disastrous way. This was referred to by some reports as technical debt, incurred by the business as a result of delaying the known upgrades to the company's systems and software. We could be incurring a form of infrastructure debt by delaying important parts of our water treatment system. As an elected body, the members of this council may or may not be here to deal with the near or long-term consequences your lack of stewardship will have on Westminster's water resources, but our entire community will have to pay for it at some point. I would rather we do it now, have it in place, be ready for what is coming, than to wait and figure it out later. I hope as more details of your plan are presented and discussed, that some of these concerns will be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Dean Van Berg.
Welcome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council, mayor, mayor pro tem, city manager. I came across something that was really interesting that I had no idea that I would run into. Under Westminster Municipal Code 4-2-5, transactions and items subject to tax, all tangible personal property that is sold, leased, or rented, whether or not it has been already taxed in a previous taxable transaction, unless specifically exempt. I'm going to be concluding 39 years in the fire service here very soon, possibly this summer. I've spent 28 years at a local jurisdiction to the west, and I'm here to plead with this city council to bring sight to a probably oversight of our use tax. In January, it became very evident through all the internet purchasing places and so forth that your use tax is being collected. And I'm just asking that the city of Westminster look at its Westminster Municipal Code 4-2-6 and bring an exemption so that your working class firefighters, police, private sector have an avenue to utilize investment tools. I'm kind of unique in that the jurisdiction I work for, I work under a 401A retirement plan, means a money purchase plan. Westminster works under the FPPA retirement plan. Both are funded in the same way, through the stock market and If everybody does good, we do good. You contribute to FPPA, as long as they invest it properly, they can pay the retirement of your police and your firefighters. Basically, I found that Colorado, the state, under statute title 3926-706, section 4, all sales of precious metals, bullion, coins, as defined in section 39-26102, 2.6 and 6.5, shall be exempt from taxation under Part 1 of the article. The storage, use, consumption of precious metals, bullion, coins, as determined in this section, 39-26102, section 2.6 and 6.5, shall be exempt from taxation under the provisions of Part 2 of this article. I'm here tonight to ask you, as the City Council, the keepers of the Westminster Tax Code, to introduce an exemption into the Westminster use tax so that folks that retire have the avenue to invest in their future. Tonight I'm holding before you a dollar bill. If you look at what the dollar bill's purchasing power is today, I could ask each one of you to guess, but I'll enlighten you, is 3 cents. This dollar bill is worth 3 cents. All you have to do is go back and do the research to 1971 when we were taken off the precious metal standard, and basically you see where our pension money value has fallen like a rock. So for my own purposes, I'm going to be looking at investing in some other avenue to do better than 3 cents on the dollar. However, it would be very advantageous for the city of Westminster to keep people like myself around who go to Home Depot, who go to Lowe's, who pay for dinners, restaurants, and so forth, and Murdoch's taxes. I mean, I pay a lot of tax. I don't expect to be taxed on money and an investment tool. Gold, silver, coins are known as currency. They're defined in the Bible. They're defined in the Constitution. They're known world round as a way to purchase and so forth, and it's known as currency. So I think this was just an oversight, and I'd really like to encourage the city to take a hard look at it, introduce an exemption which will allow the folks that retire in the city of Westminster to stay in the city of Westminster. I live out in countryside, and if I go across the street, Sims, I don't have that use tax. If I go across the street to the north and go into Broomfield, I don't have that use tax. So it's a burden, and you're going to make a lot more off of me with the services that I purchase in the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Chris Stimson. Welcome.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, councillors and city staff, Chris Stimson, Cotton Creek area of Westminster. I see several items of interest in the background for this evening's meeting. As a reminder, the original Water 2025 plan called for a build-out capacity of 60 million gallons a day, calculated to accommodate anticipated build-out development for the city. In other words, once the new facility was built and in operation, it should be able to satisfy the demands of the city ad infinitum. I would like to commend city staff for the immense amount of research and calculation work done in preparing the options included in tonight's presentation. However, I also see in the background, following Council's rejection of staff's original proposal, a leaning toward right-sizing the proposed replacement facility from 60 down to 44 MGD. This option would not include construction of ozonation capability, which would address damage to the water supply by wildfires. It will also not include the construction of granular activated carbon to treat for emerging contaminants and requirements such as PFAS. The thinking, unwise as it appears to me, seems to be that we wait until a wildfire or contaminants damage our water supply and then think about adding those capabilities. Right sizing also, of course, means building a facility that accommodates the existing population of the city and having to keep adding on to meet the needs of an inevitably growing population. And this, we are told, is being done in the name of economy. Again, I have reservations about this approach. But wait, I just employed the phrase inevitably growing population. Is that accurate? Could it be that, in a departure from our history and that of every other town in Colorado, our population will not be growing? Let's think about that. We know very well that certain members of council are wholly opposed to the idea of more building, any more building in Westminster. So, if the replacement water facility will only be able to accommodate our existing population, how easy it will be for these members of council to use that fact as an excuse to oppose any future building proposals. And given that homes are virtually unaffordable here for the middle and working classes, this means that the police department will continue to be unable to recruit enough new officers, and schools will be unable to retain teachers if these people trying to work here cannot live where they work. There may come a time when those of us still alive at that point will look back at the whole odyssey of Westminster's trying to keep its drinking water safe and paid for appropriately by its users and say, what were they thinking? We could have paid for what we needed once, not many times, and been protected from wildfires and contaminants. Now we have to explain to new residents, oh, but of course, there are no new residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Karen Calavity.
Welcome.
Hi. Hello, Karen Calavity, 9940 West Cliff Parkway. I don't think $1.2 million to do further study is a waste. In fact, to me, there should be more options than 4 centralized treatment plants. Having remote, different plants of varying sizes that operate in different parts of the city, that treat water in different parts of the city, and maybe staggered in their construction so that they might meet future requirements that a big centralized facility right now might not even meet in the future. I think that's a better approach. I know a lot of the people on this current city council ran with the idea of not taking land from a property owner who did not want to have the land taken. And the so-called preferred option on Westminster Boulevard is a huge taking of land. And as an option, I don't even know why there should be options that don't involve the taking of land, really. Smaller, the space, you can create smaller treatment plants throughout the city on available land that does not involve eminent domain. This idea of a big centralized plant is a little bit 19th century, especially when you consider it's made out of concrete. We talk about wildfires. Well, climate change is the major driver of wildfires, and cement production is 6% of greenhouse gas emissions. So just building a huge centralized plant is a contributor of climate change and a reason why there would be more wildfires rather than a solution to accommodating wildfires. There are earth-friendly ways of treating water. Biological controls, even localized composting. Westminster has been pretty famous for, at a time it used a 2-pipe system that had gray water coming out, which was shower and sink water that could be used for irrigation, rather than having to go straight into a big pipe for treatment. And I think we should start considering water that can come back to irrigate versus this idea of covering the land with concrete and asphalt. I mean, plants themselves offer carbon sequestration. Again, we need to be exchanging carbon, not just dumping it out into the atmosphere. And plants that could be irrigated with these, more different kinds of treatment rather than just chemical, big scale stuff, I think should be worked upon. I'm not a proponent of a big centralized system that can be hacked. There have been centralized systems that computer hackers have taken hostage of. Multiple plants don't allow for some of that kind of thing. And it allows us to grow in different ways in the future to meet different demands rather than having something that's created, in my mind, again, it's more of a 19th century approach than a 21st century approach. It's not biological, it's mechanical. I think we can do a little bit better job of exploring some more options, really. And I don't consider 1.2 million to be very much, especially when you think that supposedly 100 million has been saved just by doing this study. And even more could be saved, or different approaches could be made by doing a little bit more imaginative reimagining of what water treatment plants are or could be. Again, there's wastewater holds, poop and methane materials, and some, right down in Denver, the stockyards, they're extracting that methane and using it to heat buildings. And we're not even talking about that, but there's multiple uses to wastewater. And I just think we can be more imaginative than for options that pretty much are directed towards the taking of land.
Thank you. That was the last speaker that was signed up. Are you ready for me to play the voicemails?
Hello, my name is Jessica McAdoo, and I wanted
Sorry.
to see if there was any way I could get the city to... Hello, my name is Jessica McAdoo, and I wanted to see if there was any way I could get the city to come out and talk to my neighbor. I think he just doesn't understand that he is responsible for shoveling from the corner to the mailbox, because every time I have to go to the mailbox, I'm stepping over a bunch of snow. And then on top of that, we've got kids that walk home from school, and they're having to step all over that as well. And then also, my other comment is that I was hoping we could look at getting somebody to go over to just where Mandalay Middle is. And there's a street there right on Pierce Street, or there's a sidewalk there, right on Pierce Street, that has not been shoveled since the last time we got the really big snow. And kids have been either having to walk on ice over top of it and hope they don't fall, or they've been having to walk in Pierce Street just to get past that little area. And so I was wondering if there was a way we could figure out who owns that and get them to shovel or something. Anyway, thank you for your time. Bye.
Hello, Mayor, councils, and councilors. This is David Carpenter, 10762 Ross Court, Westminster. So I'm calling about item 10D, the new Benton Street improvements. I was just curious, and perhaps the presentation will answer these questions, but right now we have seems to be less than 50% build out in the new downtown area. Why are we moving forward with constructing the road now when we know is the entire downtown already built out? Is there something else going on? Do we just get a good deal? I'm just curious what makes this the right time to be spending $2 million here instead of on some of our other priorities. thank you very much for your service and your time. Have a great day. Bye.
That's the last of the voicemails.
Thank you. And thanks to everybody that came and had questions and those online. City Manager Freitag, I know you're good about having the correct person get back to these people with whatever their questions were.
Yes, we'll take care of that here in the next couple days, Mayor.
Okay, I have had a request before we get into the meat of the meeting to have a quick 5-minute bio break.
word subsidized. It's true. Of course it's true.
I'm the only one that keeps saying it. What is it?
Yeah, you're not the only one.
Subsidizing the water.
When we had the higher rates, I know somebody who did her landscaping. Because her rate was her water bill was so high. That a lot of them, it was exactly the same.
Every other city around us, every other city around us does this.
Lawn, just in case we want to sell.
Every city around us, my son paid something like $800 a month for some water heater.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
And he lives in Erie. I'm just saying, we're the only city.
We should, and exactly what you said, I said,
Along the
Thank you. Before we get started back, we had an email that was about uplands, and I want to ask our city attorney to clarify because that email had some misinformation about what uplands did with their metro district.
Thank you, Mayor. Dave Frankel, City Attorney. And just to provide some clarity, the City Council considered a service plan for the metropolitan districts associated with the Uplands development. The service plan is the controlling document as to how much debt can be issued by the district. And the service plan that was adopted on September 12th of 2022 limits the amount of debt that the district can issue to $55,765,000. So the district, whatever it chooses to vote at its private Tabor election, does not change the fact that the service district limits the amount of debt that can be issued. And that would only be changeable by a city council.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You have been very patient, City Manager Freitag. You have a report?
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, councilors, ladies and gentlemen from the community, both in attendance and watching online tonight. Some updates for everybody, and so if we could go to the next slide. Our police chief recruitment, just wanted to give everybody an update on that. We closed that application window on January 9th with 36 applications from 14 states and a nice diverse mix of applicants with some superb, very, very high qualifications. So we've got a good pool, an applicant pool. So we're excited about that. And then the next really big public piece of this will be our assessment process that we'll run through, and that will be February 28th through March 2nd. And we'll have some community interaction opportunities along with internal interviews. And so stay tuned, more to follow, but moving along quite nicely. We seem to have one of our slides, our slide deck seems to be out of sequence, but just an update on CDBG plan amendments for homeless services and change in use at 73rd and Lowell, filled with HUD update. The amendments established new goals for community development block grant activity and fund regional programs which provide services in support of persons experiencing homelessness, and develop a community event and open air market space on the city-owned property at West 73rd Avenue and Lowell Boulevard. If you want to hear more about that project, that's at 73rd and Lowell. You can go to our webpage at www.westminstereconomicdevelopment.org/ and the alphabet soup of additional stringers on there. So, at any rate, wanted to provide an update on that. Next slide. For the community, I know this has been talked about for many, many years. I'm learning a little bit more each and every day about this, but this Northwest Rail Peak Service Study that's going on, and this is the expansion of rail service from Westminster Station to Boulder and then on to Longmont. And so RTD will hold an open house on February 2nd from 5 to 7 p.m. At our City Park Recreation Center. There's also an online session on January 31st until February 21st at that Northwest Rail Peak Services Study online meeting.com. But that's an exciting project. I know that the community has been anticipating that for many, many years, and so we're excited about seeing that moving forward, and certainly encourage folks to attend the open house. Pizza Hut owners looking to rebuild and reopen. Staff recently held pre-application meeting with the property owners at 7820 Sheridan Boulevard. The Pizza Hut, which was impacted by a fire in 2021, is proposed to be redesigned and rebuilt with a smaller footprint to focus on delivery and carryout. So good news for the community there. Next slide. And some Westy wins. You may not have heard it, but our Sewerside squad scores in the National Division II victory. And so our Sewerside squad, which is a team of 4 city water plant operators and water quality analysts, won the Water Environment Federation's National Operation Challenge title for WEF Division II. So that means our city team won at the national level, and so that's pretty impressive. I'm excited about that. Some great pictures on the right. They scored higher than on the safety challenge than any other team except for the number one finisher in Division One. They also outscored any competitor in any division in the lab. And demonstrating our teamwork, our precision, and our ability to achieve results under pressure, the team also outscored all teams in the critical laboratory challenge. So kudos to our sewer side squad. Very exciting that they're carrying Westminster's name across the nation. So congratulations to them. Next slide, please. This is also a Westie win, and that is there was, with the passage of the appropriations bill here at the end of the year, that's the federal appropriations bill, there was a $3 million earmark that was inserted into that appropriations bill to allow for the reconstruction of Federal Parkway. Our federal lobbyist that we work with, Mike Dino, helped to prioritize that earmark so that it was able to be funded in the appropriations bill. The last bullet on there and the map to the right really talks about where this will occur, but it's on Federal Parkway between 120th Avenue and 122nd Avenue. So it will have increased lanes and bike lanes on that road. And so that's a needed addition to our community and a nice Westie win. Next slide. And then we wanted to welcome our new Utilities Engineering Manager, and she's in attendance with us this evening. Leslie Menning joined the Public Works and Utilities team on January 17th. She'll be overseeing our engineering team and the Utilities Capital Project Program. She's got 25 years of experience working in the private side, but also the public municipal water and wastewater sector. She's constructed large capital projects, managed large regulatory programs, and managed technical staff of up to 40 people. She has previous experience in Loveland, went to Cincinnati for a while. She saw the light and decided to come back here and work for the city of Westminster in the great state of Colorado. And so we want to say welcome to Leslie, and please join me in a round of applause and welcome. Welcome to the team. Yep, welcome to the team. Next slide, please. Before I go to things to know, I did want to provide an update. This was one of our slides that didn't make it to the packet. But we had this weekend, and we shared with the council, we had a utility billing technical issue. And so we do utility billing with a third-party vendor. They had some sort of technical glitch where they essentially sent out 1,900 email notifications to people that were prior utility service or billing customers. Guess what? People got a surprise on Saturday morning and said, what the heck? And so our staff immediately contacted our third-party billing partner and said, hey, we got a problem. Let's take a look at this. That third-party billing partner has established an incident response team to look at it and try and get down into the weeds and find out why it happened, and what the complexity is. The good news is our staff responded yesterday, got their activities together and their programming together. Today they were there and available to community members who called in. So they answered 188 calls and then responded to 60 emails that came into the city. And so nice response effort from the city team. Certainly appreciate that. Our staff will continue to analyze payments that have been made during this, if you will, incident window, and we'll continue to partner with the vendor to update all impacted customers. But at this time, we think we're out of the woods, no more issues there. We've got a good handle on it. But certainly thanks to Deputy City Manager Larry Dorr for his efforts in rallying the team yesterday to make sure that we got on this very, very quickly. And so job well done by the city. Moving on to things to know. Environmental Advisory Board meeting Wednesday, January 25th, 7 to 8:30 p.m. City Hall CMO Conference Room. Historic Landmark Board meeting Wednesday, January 25th, 7 to 8:30 p.m. City Hall City Council Boardroom. And then next Monday night, City Council Special Study Session. That's our strategic plan workshop, 6:30, right here in our boardroom next door. Next slide. And then the 2023 point-in time count. That's when folks go out into the community and make contact with individuals experiencing homelessness. They do it throughout the metro area. It's Tuesday night from 8 a.m. or Tuesday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And volunteers are needed, so if anybody wants to participate in that and help, the website is listed there. You can certainly jump on that. Wednesday, February 1st, special permits and license board meeting goes from 7 to 8:30 p.m., City Hall Council Chambers. One book Westminster discussion, Woman of Light, is going Wednesday, February 1st, 7 to 8:30 p.m., Irving Street Library. If you haven't read the book, I'm about halfway through. Very, very good, but I'm a slow reader, and so I'm getting there, but it's fascinating, and it's about the area. It's about Denver. So I encourage folks to check it out. If you can make the event, great. If not, please pick up a copy and read it. Lastly, City Council study session, and that's Monday, February 6th, and not February 3rd, 6:30 p.m., City Hall, City Council Boardroom. Next slide. Information-only slides, we provided these to the council. So the strategic plan to update, which is the end of year 2022 report, an overview of our CDBG grant housing lift housing preservation program, also letting the city council know about annual conferences upcoming, and then a 2017 draft Stanley Lake Regional Park master plan. And then finally, lots of ways to contact us. Please, if you have questions, concerns, issues, you can contact my office at 303-658-2006. You can contact me directly at mfreitag@cityofwestminster.us. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, check us out on Instagram, or you can even connect with us on Nextdoor. How about that? I remembered this time. And then, as always, just wrapping it up, want to remind folks we want to be accessible, we want to be responsive, we want to be transparent, we want to be accountable. And so please, if you've got a question, please reach out. We're happy to answer it. Any questions? That's all I have this evening.
Any questions? Thank you. City Council comments. Councilor Baker?
Thank you, Mayor. I am sure we were all shocked by the recent raw display of hate by the Broomfield City Council. They intimidated and restricted their residents concerning guns. How can hate fill their hearts so it sweeps aside their really sense of fairness, duty to safeguard citizens' civil rights, compassion, and reason that we know exists on the Broomfield City Council? And Westminster knows Broomfield very, very well. Broomfield has been our trusted partner on many vital projects. We manage important roads with them. We have preserved an important piece of open space and local history with them. We stand side by side with them on the often frustrating and always aggravating Rocky Flats Stewardship Council and Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport Community Noise Roundtable. Broomfield and Westminster engaged the federal government to get really restoration of damage caused by the irresponsible failures and illegal conduct at the Rocky Flats nuclear weapon plant. Like really other members on our council, I have a great affinity for the people of really Broomfield. I live only a few thousand feet from the Broomfield limits. And because Broomfield and Westminster rely on the same school district, my kids graduated in Broomfield. I mean, the recreation sports baseball teams on which my kids played were based in Broomfield. In the past, I was repeatedly placed with and worked with Broomfield voters in state and federal political districts. I am embarrassed for the people of Broomfield that really such hate filled their city council. Even worse, the hate that really filled their council was really disguised as a virtue. I have been asked, why do I care? That is Broomfield and we are Westminster. Well, friends don't let friends drive drunk. I consider Broomfield a friend, and the Broomfield City Council is driving drunk. But that really metaphor, however friendly and lighthearted it might be, diminishes, the gravity of the situation. The Broomfield City Council is attempting to take fundamental civil rights away from their residents. How can anyone stay really silent when really civil rights are being stripped from our neighbors? I think I know where the hate comes from. It is really generated by fear from the devastating harm caused by the misuse of guns. Whether in Boulder or at Club Q or in the murders and suicides that really repeatedly steal people from our society. Yesterday it was California. But the Broomfield Council should not feel alone in their intense desire to really protect people. It is my opinion that every elected body shares the desire to really protect our people. The difficult question is how to protect our people. In the absence of fair, effective, and obvious answers, fear really monopolizes our attention, and fear facilitates wrong answers. No elected body, whether in our city or our state, is immune from the fear and the wrong answers that fear generates. The courage that every elected body must have is to reject the wrong answers. And history shows America has repeatedly chosen wrong answers when elected officials are filled with fear and the hate that fear generates. We are fully aware of those big wrong answers. President Roosevelt's Executive Order 9066, forcing over 100,000 Americans into concentration camps. Montana's of the imprisonment of dissenters during World War I. Jim Crow laws, the Cherokee Trail of Tears and the many other Native American expulsions. But on the small scale, little wrong answers are also destructive. Local governments must not allow little wrong answers, regardless of our fears. I do not see how the ordinances that the Broomfield City Council considered address events that happened in Broomfield. The ordinance seemed to be based on events in other places, but the ordinances are really directed at completely innocent individuals in Broomfield. The only attribute residents in Broomfield share with, the perpetrators of these horrible crimes is that they have guns. The Broomfield ordinances are meant to harass, shame, and intimidate the decent, honorable, innocent people in Broomfield that own guns. The residents of Broomfield that came to really speak against the ordinances seem to have been ignored and dismissed. I did not see and really exploration of real incidences that happened in Broomfield. How will these ordinances make Broomfield safer? Would the Kyle Miller be alive today if those ordinances have been in effect? American society holds a very high standard for ourselves. The primacy of the individual. We say we wish to reward and to hold people accountable for their individual actions and conduct. We say we do not accept individuals being judged as members of a group. This ideal is succinctly stated in the Martin Luther King Jr. quote, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." And American society has made great progress towards this ideal in judging people as individuals and not because of group association. Fortunately, there are at least 3 glaring exceptions to the progress to stop blaming all members of a group. And the 3 groups where there is an unashamed public demand for group of the punishment are gun owners, Muslims, and the police. While my of the small voice cannot change society, I can call upon my colleagues, both in my city council, our friends on other city councils, and our friends at the legislature to reject the wrong answers that demand group punishments and really restrictions. Passing ordinances and laws that attack our citizens for actions they have not committed is wrong. Harassing and intimidating our citizen compounds that error, and depriving our citizens of their liberty, their safety, and their property must always be unacceptable to everyone. Thank you.
Councilor Emmons?
Thank you. Regarding the agenda, I had sent an email to City Manager Freitag regarding the 2017 Stanley Lake Regional Master Plan, and in the staff report, I had asked for a request for it to be amended, as it was written that it said that there was months of exploration, that the Stanley Lake Boating Task Force did not identify a solution that would support allowing trailer boating back on Stanley Lake without compromising the water quality. And I had made mention of this and pushback in our study session in November regarding how that was an inaccurate statement. And so I would like that our report, staff report, be amended to correctly reflect that the Boating Task Force did find solutions, but that they haven't been vetted. And that was confirmed by staff in November that those solutions were never vetted. So it's confusing to me that the solutions brought forward in the staff report, it says that they did not find solutions, but it was confirmed that they were never vetted in our study session. So I would like that to be amended to correctly reflect that there were solutions, but staff never vetted that. And if not, I would like it correctly reflected in our minutes, so that when we accept them next week, that those are in my council comments for an accurate reflection of the Stanley Lake Boating Task Force. Thank you. And I would like to say happy birthday to my birthday buddy, Abby Fitch.
Thank you, and happy birthday to you, Councilor Evans.
It's birthday all over. Councilor Seymour.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One item that's on the agenda, this is a joint effort between Westminster Rotary Club and the City of Westminster. On January 28th at 6:30 at the MAC at 3295 West 72nd Avenue, Rotary Club of Westminster is hosting a group of Armenian folk dancers, musicians that will be here that night, and the city graciously worked with us to find the venue, and we have up to 250 seats available, of which I believe about 200 have been taken. There is no cost for the event. They are traveling throughout the country and staying with host families. Of course, donations at the door are greatly appreciated, but you can go to the Eventbrite site and register, and I believe the flyer is also on the city website and on the Westminster Rotary Club Facebook page also. There's a QR code on that, so we'd invite you to join us for that evening, but sign up soon so you don't get locked out. I wanted to address some comments made by my colleague, Councilor Baker, on regarding the new downtown during our January 9th meeting. My colleague acknowledged that he has been encouraged to look forward to changes coming to the new downtown rather than dwell on the past decisions that cannot be changed. I had great hope that the remainder of his comment would be just that, forward thinking. It quickly became apparent that I was wrong as my colleague went on to explain why the initial Urban Renewal Authority, in his word, was corrupt. A term that he used 6 times more, which also referred to persons, which I find unacceptable, versus addressing the process and how setting up the Urban Renewal Authority robs sister districts of funds. While I am tempted to push back with thoughts about how 80 to 100 mils of property tax on old vacant buildings was better than new occupied buildings, I refuse to continually be baited into a never-ending debate on a moot point. While my colleague acknowledges that the majority will of council drives the process, he refuses time and again to recognize that much of council approves the current vision while still reserving the privilege and right to disagree on land use or sales prices. My colleague has, on numerous occasions, stated we need to have a discussion about the new downtown. By repeatedly making this statement, my colleague is in fact ignoring the majority will of council. Well, the academic endeavors of my colleague is laudable vis-a-vis writing articles and letters to the editor. This council's purvey is to establish or agree to a vision and allow staff to execute that vision without the threat of being called corrupt. My colleague ended his comments asking to be proven wrong about his conclusion around the formation of the new downtown urban renewal authority. Again, attempting to revive a moot historical debate best reserved for coffee or dinner conversations, not for this policy-making body. Speaking of coffee and food, there's a question about if there is a question about vibrancy of the new downtown, I encourage my colleague, and that matter of fact, all Westminster to join me someday at Sweet Bloom Coffee, if we can find a seat. Tappenberger, Famille, and the soon-to-open Bonchon always packed Olive Garden or even the Alamo Draft House. Reach out and talk to new businesses leasing space to join in the exciting growth of our new downtown as it is now. And ask those moving into the downtown, especially those who are starting to move into their newly purchased townhomes, why they chose to spend their money on and in the new downtown. You can catch many of them sipping wine at the tattered cover while perusing the stacks. And those living and coming to spend their money, their hard-earned dollars, are the ones who drive the market. And the market is speaking loud and clear. It's time to move forward. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. First, thank you to everybody who showed up to talk to us tonight and hear our meeting and the presentation that we had earlier. Next, I want to remind folks that it's a new year, so I am doing my town halls, or really it's just kind of a get together and have a beer and pizza with me. It is the third Tuesday of every month, so the next one will be February 21st. We start at 6:30 and at 8:30, or when they kick us out. Often it's when they kick us out. This last meeting, though, I wanted to bring a couple of things back that were asked of me. One was if we've thought about using historic grants to do some of the refurbishing with the rodeo market. I know we've done that in the past. That was an interesting concept that I don't recall recently being brought up. And the other one was just a fun idea, and this is more for probably Tomas back there and his team, why we don't have a chocolate tasting with our wine tasting or beer tasting. And I thought that was a good enough thing that I would bring that forward. So hopefully anyone who hears this would be able to join us next time on the 21st of February. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I just want to remind everybody, the councils of all the cities in Adams County are getting together Wednesday night, meeting with our legislators and having a meal together and sharing. We all are facing similar situations, and I know from being with Metro Mayors a week ago for an 8-hour session of strategic planning. It's just interesting and always helpful to know what others are doing, and you don't have to go and reinvent the wheel. You just have to talk and find out how people are attacking things and giving you some new ideas. So I always look forward to, and glad they're back in this is our third time, I think, back in person together, and it's just good to have. That brings us to item 9A, Resolution 2. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt resolution number 2, reappointing members and appointing new and alternative members to the Environmental Advisory Board, Historic Landmark Board, Human Services Board, Inclusivity Board, Parks, Recreation, Libraries, and Open Space Advisory Board, Personnel Board, Planning Commission, and Special Permit and Licensing Board, respectively.
Councilor Emmons?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass resolution number 2. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem DeMott.
Yes.
Councilor Emmons.
Yes.
Councilor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Councilor Nurmela.
Yes.
And Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
That brings us to item 10A1, Councilor's Bill number 2. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to pass Councilor Bill number 2 on first reading, appropriating a transfer of $22,320,503 from the Utility Capital Project Reserve to the Utility Water Fund for the remaining balance on the 37.65 acres of land acquisition related to the Jefferson County District Court Case 2020 CV 30231.
Councilor Emmons.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass Councilor's Bill number 2. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
Councilor Emmons.
Yes.
Councilor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Councilor Nermella.
Yes.
Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
And Councilor Baker.
No.
The motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
That brings us to item 10A2, approval of Councilor's Bill number 2.
I move, thank you,
sorry,
Mayor. I
Mayor Pro
move to contingent upon approval of Councilor Bill number 2 on second reading to authorize the expense of $22,320,503 for deposit, excuse me, to preserve the right to appeal the verdict in the Jefferson County District Court Case 2020 CV 30231.
Councilor Emmons.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass Councilor's Bill number 2 on second reading. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Baker.
Yes, I will be voting against this because it's of the property we do not need at a price that is too much.
Roll call, please.
Councilor Emmons.
Yes.
Councilor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Councilor Nermella.
Yes.
Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Councilor Baker.
No.
And Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
That brings us to item 10B1, Mayor Pro Tem.
I think she,
Oh, sorry.
I think she beat me.
Councilor Emmons.
Thank you. I move to adopt resolution number 3, authorizing the city manager to sign an agreement with Jefferson Center for Mental Health, Jefferson County, and the cities of Arvada, Edgewater, Golden, Lakewood, Wheat Ridge, and Westminster.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt resolution number 3. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Councilor Nermella.
Yes.
Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
And Councilor Emmons.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
That brings us to item 10C1. Councilor Seymour.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move based on a recommendation of the city manager to determine the public interest will best be served, authorizing the city manager to waive the city's bidding requirements to purchase 50 additional OneView reporting licenses and support from DLT Solutions LLC, an amount not to exceed $56,325 in 2023.
Councilor Emmons.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass item 10C1. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Councilor Nermella.
Yes.
Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
Councilor Emmons.
Yes.
And Councilor Azadi.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
That brings us to item 10C2. Councilor Seymour.
Thank you. I move based on the recommendation of the city manager to determine the public interest will best be served by authorizing the city manager to waive the city's bidding requirements to renew support and licensing agreement with DLT Solutions LLC for Oracle's J.D. Edwards Enterprise One Enterprise Resource Planning System for an additional 2-year term in an amount not to exceed $396,950 over the contract term, subject to annual appropriations.
Councilor Emmons.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass item 10C2. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilor Nermella.
Yes.
Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
Councilor Emmons.
Yes.
Councilor Azadi.
Yes.
And Mayor McNally.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 7-0 vote.
That brings us to item 10D1. I don't know who went first.
I'm not sure.
Councilor Emmons.
It's my birthday. I move to authorize the reallocation of funds in the amount of $1,532,000 from the WURP roadway alley account to the WURP Benton Street Phase 1 and 2 account.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass item 10D1. Is there any further discussion? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, we had a voicemail on this, and the question was around why now that this was brought forward, since there's not anything developed. Or, well, I guess the question was if there was anything developed. So I just want to make sure that we get on the record what the answer to that question was.
I'll give you the basic, and then we'll have Deputy Director, or Correction Director Downing come forward. But bottom line is that, this is the plan. The money's available. The council approved this capital project as part of the 2023 capital plan. And so, we're ready to move forward. And so, Director Downing, if you'd like to come forward and clarify, but that's it in a nutshell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Freitag. Just wanted to point out one other thing. If you follow the timeline in the staff report, the Benton Street project is being undertaken. The proposal is to undertake it in 2 phases. The phase before you tonight is the utility phase of the project, and it would be anticipated that that would be followed by the actual roadway construction. And if you looked at the various dates listed there, it'll be almost a 2-year process to do the entire project. So whatever we start now won't be finished till close to this time in 2025. So there's some lag time there to try to, since this is the city's responsibility to do this perimeter infrastructure, it's a 2-year process to get there.
And I don't know if this is going to be for you or for somebody else, but I kind of follow up on it. So my understanding of it, it goes around what is already being marketed as certain plots. So, I mean, those things aren't up for discussion at this point as far as those plots or lots are already being marketed for sale the way that they are. So we would be responsible for this part. And if that is right, will this help us additionally market these to folks that may want to buy those properties to move them along?
I see Lindsay queuing up.
Economic Development Director Lindsay Kimball.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, excellent question. So we install first the horizontal infrastructure. So as Mr. Downing said, the utilities, the roadway improvements in phase 2, that lays the groundwork that will attract actually some of our most valuable assets to downtown, which will be that office space. So this project unlocks the potential for office in downtown.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Those are all my questions. And so, because I've heard one of my colleagues ask why earlier today when I was listening to the chamber broadcast, as well as the gentleman who called in asked the same question on the chamber broadcast today. So I wanted to make sure that I understood it because I am in support, because like we've talked about before when we've talked about this plan, we're at the point in my mind of this plan where the plots are laid out and we're waiting for people to purchase them. And the goal is, in my mind, is to get these out of city ownership as soon as possible. And so to that end, that doesn't mean that we don't still have oversight of every single development or purchase that happens of properties that haven't been purchased yet. So we have a lot of flexibility as a council on future ones if there are still plots left past this council, which I anticipate there probably will be, in order to make choices along the way. So it continues down that path of being able to decide, and react to the market. So for those reasons, I am going to be supporting this.
For me, we did put it in the CIP for this year. So I think if we put it in there, we should vote for it. Anyway, roll call.
Counselor Seymour.
Yes.
Counselor Baker.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Demat.
Yes.
Counselor Emmons.
Yes.
Counselor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
And Counselor Nurmela.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
That brings us to item 10D2. Counselor Emmons.
I move to award the construction contract and authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Alpine Civil Construction Incorporated in the amount of $1,775,755 plus a contingency in the amount of $180,000 for a total not to exceed the amount of $1,955,755 for the Benton Street roadway and utility construction project phase 1.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Second.
Falling asleep. Any questions? Councilor Baker?
Yeah, I'd like to be really reminded of the bids that were led on this and how they came in.
Director Downing, are you able to respond to that?
Counselor, I'm not going to be able to get that information for you immediately. I can tell you this, though. My staff advised me that they were extremely pleased with the outcomes of the bid. They thought it was below the rates that we are seeing on other construction projects these days. I hope that's somewhat helpful to you.
Thank you.
Actually, Counselor, if it's okay, Mayor, we've got numbers pulled up here, so
Perfect.
we can share that Alpine Civil Construction, total bid, 1.775754 and 88 cents. Native Sun Construction, 1.974 500 and 48 cents. RME, doing business as Elite Surface Infrastructure, $2,139,645.50. Oh, that was very helpful. Thank you. SMH West, 2.169 million. Goodland Construction, 2.47, 842 and 57 cents. And Engineers Estimate, 2.564, 737 and 24 cents. So Alpine Civil Construction, certainly the low bid.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Baker.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
Counselor Emmons.
Yes.
Counselor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Counselor Nermella.
Yes.
And Counselor Seymour.
Yes.
The motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
That brings us to item A1, Councilor's Bill number 1. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to pass Council Bill number 1 on second reading, amending sections 10-1-12, 10-1-12.5, 10-1-16, and 10-1-17 of the Westminster Municipal Code regarding parking restrictions and enforcement to authorize the Department of Community Development staff to enforce parking restrictions.
Councilor Emmons?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass Councilor's Bill number 1. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Azadi?
I just had a question. A community member is asking if this is actually creating any new restrictions related to parking. I don't think it is. It's just enabling our community, the development to take control of that. But can we get an answer to that real quick, just for the public's sake?
Director Downing?
That's accurate, Counselor. For your information, I believe there's going to be one more action required before the duties officially move over to community development, but that'll be coming shortly.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Yes.
Counselor Emmons.
Yes.
Counselor Azadi.
Yes.
Mayor McNally.
Yes.
Counselor Nermella.
Yes.
Counselor Seymour.
Yes.
And Counselor Baker.
No.
The motion passes on a 6-1 vote.
And before we close this meeting, I meant to mention with Councilor Emmons, you brought up the boating issue. I know people are gone that facilitated that. I looked to either you, Councilor Emmons, or Councilor Seymour. Did you go to their meetings, and do we have any notes anywhere, or do you know the people that were in charge, and do we have any notes from anything that we could get, because staff does not have that?
Mayor, weren't those meetings voice recorded by staff?
Yeah, there was recordings.
Deputy City Manager Opie can respond to that. She was knowledgeable.
Yes, I was looking through those materials today. Meetings were recorded. The last meeting that was recorded was from October of 2019. And we do have some information. Actually, previously, a council had asked for a portion of that to be transcribed, so we have that piece, so we can send that back to City Council.
Perfect. Thanks. Because I agree. I know just from at the time being a citizen and looking at the two of you, and especially Councilor Seymour that went to the meetings when you could. I just think we don't do them justice having nothing in there or the way it's stated. They spent almost a year and they did do a lot of things, so it needs to be reflected. Anyway, I will adjourn this meeting at 9:37. And do we have a reason for executive session?
Yes, Mayor, if I may. The executive session that's proposed this evening is pursuant to Section 111.3C6 of the Westminster Municipal Code and Section 24.6402.4D of the Colorado Revised Statutes, and it is to review and discuss city facility security measures.
I will poll council that you're willing to go into executive session, and we'll keep what is said there confidential. Councilor Izadi?
Yes.
Councilor Namella?
I guess. No, I'm just kidding. Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Affirmative.
Nancy McNally, yes. Councilor Emmons?
Yes.
Councilor Seymour?
Yes.
Councilor Baker?
Yes.
We are headed to executive session. I would suggest we get birthday cake on our way so we have something to eat. Thanks, everybody, for being here, and have a good night.